Hi, Beng Kooi.
Hello, Li Kim.
I'm Li Kim, and I would like to introduce you to Ooi Beng Kooi, who has been a student of His Eminence Tsem Rinpoche for about how long now?
It's coming on 11 years now.
Okay. Beng Kooi works closely with His Eminence Tsem Rinpoche. And I think for this session here, we will regard Rinpoche lovingly as just Rinpoche. I understand that you work very closely with Rinpoche and you hold many positions in Kachara, and you are devoted to the work that Rinpoche does. I am very interested, and I think many people as well, on Rinpoche's blog, dated April 30th, 2018. Rinpoche wrote an open letter, an appeal to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Of course, the letter is on the blog. I think from the perspective of one of Rinpoche's assistants who works closely with him, what do you think is the sentiment of Rinpoche when he wrote that letter?
Well, Li Kim, for those who follow Rinpoche's blog closely, they'll see that for about 2-3 years now, Rinpoche has been consistently writing, speaking, recording videos, and giving teachings about Dorje Shugden. And more specifically also addressing the injustice, the discrimination, and the segregation that Dorje Shugden practitioners face. So this open letter it's not the first appeal that Rinpoche has made to His Holiness Dalai Lama. There have been others over the past couple of years, but perhaps this is the first time that Rinpoche has so directly, yet extremely respectfully addressed His Holiness in this manner. And the objective of that is to, well, lift the ban, or reduce the discrimination, the segregation that Shugden practitioners all over the world face.
When I read it, the appeal to His Holiness the Dalai Lama was very clear and very direct to heal the divide among the Tibetan people, especially the Dorje Shugden practitioners and the non-Dorje Shugden practitioners. So many letters have been written to the Dalai Lama, since 1996?
Yes, the first, I think, the original ones probably came from the Dorje Shugden Society in Delhi, which was the first Shugden Society ever established. And yes, they did send in many letters of appeal to His Holiness, to the Indian government, if I'm not mistaken, to many other international societies around the world, appealing for an end to the discrimination that they faced. Unfortunately, those letters were not particularly successful. Others have also attempted through many other different approaches, different channels. There have been peaceful demonstrations held around the world in the West, in Europe, as well as in America.
Following the Dalai Lama when he does his teachings worldwide.
Yes, there have been a series of those. There was also a court case in the Indian courts taken against His Holiness in an attempt to use Indian law to end the discrimination against Dorje Shugden practitioners. That was a number of years ago as well.
There is something that I think many people perhaps ask, and maybe you can shed some light. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is one of the teachers of Rinpoche. And obviously, by keeping his choice of practicing Dorje Shugden, he is on opposite sides of the Dalai Lama. But yet, Rinpoche has never once spoken harshly or badly against the Dalai Lama. In fact, he still holds the Dalai Lama at such high regard. How does His Eminence Tsem Rinpoche balance this? It's obvious that the Dalai Lama says, no, you cannot practice, and given all the resolutions, against this. How does Tsem Rinpoche manage this? It must be emotional.
It's very difficult. Rinpoche finds himself in a difficult position, kind of like between a rock and a hard place. In 1979, in Washington, New Jersey, Rinpoche received teachings on the 8 verses of mind transformation, as well as the oral transmission of the Mani Mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And since young, Rinpoche has always had a natural respect, devotion to His Holiness, even before meeting him. And that continues till today. So it is without a doubt that Rinpoche has tremendous devotion for His Holiness. But at the same time, His Holiness is not Rinpoche's root guru. Rinpoche's root guru is His Holiness Kyabje Dzong Rinpoche, whom Rinpoche met in Los Angeles, and from whom Rinpoche has received many, many teachings, initiations, transmissions, including the practice of Dorje Shugden and Sokte, which is loosely translated as life entrustment. So that's in essence, that is a commitment that Rinpoche has made to his root guru, Kyabje Dzong Rinpoche, which he cannot break. So there are two things at play here. One is that there is a specific commitment that has been made to his root guru to uphold this practice. And so by the principles of guru devotion, which are foundational in Tibetan Buddhism especially, one cannot go against the promises or commitments that one has made. And that's understood by everyone, including His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So what you have here is a situation whereby His Holiness has given advice that people should refrain from the practice of Dorje Shugden for a number of reasons which I'll not go into right now. There are too many.
Yeah. And it will start a whole new discussion.
Yeah. And at the same time, His Holiness has said that those who choose to maintain their practice of Shugden despite his advice should not attend any of his secular or spiritual talks. So what Rinpoche has chosen to do is to definitely keep up his practice, which he has made a very strong commitment already, and as closely as possible follow His Holiness's advice, and
Which is
Rinpoche does not attend any of His Holiness's talks, although he very much wishes to.
I know.
I think, yeah.
In the open letter, the part that made me want to cry was when Rinpoche wrote to the Dalai Lama and said that many people miss attending the Dalai Lama's teaching and seeing the Dalai Lama. And then Rinpoche wrote, I know I do. And he misses it so much.
Oh yeah, there's a common misconception out there that those who practice Dorje Shugden are against His Holiness, but that's absolutely not true. And in Rinpoche's case, definitely not. I've heard in private audiences, non-public events, Rinpoche has expressed himself many, many times how much he genuinely misses His Holiness, and the one thing he would like very much is to heal this divide that separates Shugden and anti-Shugden practitioners. It's quite an unfortunate situation.
Yeah.
One more thing I'd like to add, actually, is that Rinpoche has 16 gurus, and the majority of them actually practice Dorje Shugden.
In fact, when I think, if I'm not mistaken, when Rinpoche met His Holiness the Dalai Lama the first time, the Dalai Lama himself was still practicing Dorje Shugden.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Why write it now? And is there a higher chance now that perhaps the Dalai Lama will do something?
Well, it's interesting you asked that. Rinpoche wrote the letter in April on April 30th. Yeah. And the month of April has seen many interesting events happening in the international scene. We have North and South Korea.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And we have what looks like the beginnings of an improved relationship, an improving relationship between India and China. And we also see His Holiness expressing fairly consistently since last year, actually, since November last year or so, that he would like very much to return to China. And His Holiness has even sent his personal emissary on a private visit to China, possibly to have talks on how His Holiness and the Tibetan people can return. And most recently, on April 25th, His Holiness has for the first time acknowledged the Chinese recognized Panchen Lama, Ginsen Nobu, as the official Panchen Lama. So there seems to be this general tone of reconciliation. There seems to be a trend of His Holiness wanting to heal the divide between himself, the Tibetan people, and the people of China. And so it is as good a time as any, really, for Rinpoche to make this impassioned appeal to His Holiness. Because what many people don't understand is that His Holiness is the ultimate spiritual authority for most Tibetans, perhaps even all Tibetans. And in 1996, when the ban first began, it was on the words of a single person, which is His Holiness. So it goes to reason that only His Holiness can lift the ban, if you like, or completely remove the discrimination that Shugden practitioners currently face by just making an announcement, by just addressing his people to say that Dorje Shugden practice is okay.
Yep.
And we don't need to do anything about it. Let's bring the Tibetan people together. And this is what Rinpoche would really like.
Similarly, like how His Holiness at the airport just says that he's the official Panchen Lama. Just one simple statement has already more or less kind of resolved one issue.
Well, perhaps not resolved it entirely, but it's definitely a good beginning.
An opening to solution rather than further conflict. Can you explain deeper why His Eminence Tsem Rinpoche would put himself out there with regards to this whole Dorje Shugden issue? Isn't he kind of exposing himself to be criticized, ridiculed, just like how other Dorje Shugden practitioners are discriminated against?
I mean, yeah, definitely Rinpoche has faced his more than his fair share of attacks, criticism, threats, and all that. I mean, if you go online, you'll see what people are saying, the vulgarities and all that. You'll see that.
The name calling and everything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I think why Rinpoche does this, Rinpoche's purpose is very, very clear. Apart from what I've said before about Rinpoche wanting to heal this divide between the Shugden and non-Shugden practitioners, Rinpoche has a bigger purpose in mind as well. Where we are today with the current situation, any Dorje Shugden practitioner is automatically thought of as, in negative terms, whether it is as demon worshippers or
Chinese dogs, Chinese spies,
Chinese spies, as misguided,
ignorant,
and so on. These mistaken accusations follow Dorje Shugden practitioners around the world. Okay? And more importantly, it also affects the good name of the Dorje Shugden Lamas. For example, the reincarnation of His Holiness Kyabje Chujang Rinpoche, who was the junior tutor of His Holiness Dalai Lama. So his current incarnation lives in Vermont, in Chujang Buddhist Institute, and there are many others as well. For example, His Eminence Jomo Geshe Rinpoche, His Eminence Zamir Rinpoche. I mean, I could go on. There are many, many Dorje Shugden Lamas around there, out there in the world. And the thing is, Dorje Shugden is actually a relatively minor practice. He's a Dharma protector, and his function and his purpose is to guide and protect practitioners along their spiritual path. But the main practice of Tibetan Buddhism is really to practice mind transformation, to practice the Lamrim, to practice the higher teachings like Yamantaka, Vajrayogini, Guhya Samaja, and so on. So these lineage lamas, who also happen to practice Dorje Shugden, have tremendous knowledge to give to students and followers, have tremendous benefit to bring to the world. But unfortunately, due to the situation, the Dorje Shugden situation, they're not able to.
Yeah.
So Rinpoche has taken it upon himself to clear the name of Dorje Shugden, in the process clearing the name of what we now term as Dorje Shugden Lamas, who are actually just high lamas.
Yes.
So that they can fulfill the purpose for which they took rebirth, which is to benefit
many
people. So that's really what Rinpoche is here to do. And Rinpoche is at the perfect age to do so. Many of the reincarnated lamas, whom I mentioned, they are still young. They're finishing up their education. The senior lamas, many of them have already passed on. And so Rinpoche is really at the perfect age and has been exposed to the traditions of both East and West, fully understands the Tibetan psyche, has lived in the monasteries, understands how Tibetans as well as non-Tibetans think, and can speak fluently in English, in Tibetan, and therefore is perfectly positioned, I would say, to do this.
I think that's what you've shared will give more light to many people in terms of how Rinpoche thinks and the bigger picture that he sees. Thank you for that.
What I've also been told by friends in Tibetan society is that many young Tibetans, as well as older Tibetans, have been listening to Rinpoche's talks, going on tsemrinpoche.com, which is where many of Rinpoche's thoughts are published, as well as the thoughts of his students. And many have written in or said anonymously, most of the time, that these teachings really help them understand what's going on. And it gives them hope.
And comfort.
And comfort. For those who have suffered tremendously over the last 22 years since the ban began, they find comfort that someone is speaking out for them. For those who have been confused, they find that they begin to understand what is happening and not just listening to what
propaganda has out there.
Yeah, but to really examine what's going on and then through logic and facts think for themselves what's right and what's wrong, if you like.
Like you said, Rinpoche is at the perfect age and position where he can, his methods of delivering messages and having people think logically and making sound decisions or wise decisions, he appeals to both the young and the older generations. He kind of fills this gap.
Yeah, and what people say as well is that they really appreciate how Rinpoche is extremely respectful to His Holiness. Yes. And I think that's something any Tibetan can identify with. Yes. And so it's also very encouraging for us, the students of Kachara, to hear that what we are doing is having some effect out there.
Not just some. I think a lot of effect. I think that many people out there are millions of viewers and visitors to Rinpoche's blog. So I don't think it's a little effect. I think it's pretty substantial, and the works of His Eminence Tsem Rinpoche does and indeed reaches out to many people, giving them understanding, giving them comfort, and sometimes humor.
Oh, definitely.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.